and welcome to the Tournament Center. I'm Zach Hill, here with the undefeated Matthias Hunt, with one of the most interesting and frankly confusing decks that I have ever seen at a Pro Tour. Matthias, can you tell us what on earth your deck does?
Okay, well, for Modern this weekend, I'm playing Amulet of Vigor combo.
Okay.
So it's a very fast combo deck. It's a very kind of different combo deck. It doesn't really play by the rules of one land per turn and how you make mana in the normal ways.
All right, well, I definitely like to break rules, so let's see how we do that. Now, if we can take a look at this first slide, actually, I'm starting with lands. Now, very few other decks in the format play this series of lands called the Karus. See, Simic, Growth Chamber, Gruul Turf. Take a look at the next slide. There's a few more of these in here. You've got Golgari Rot Farm, Boros Garrison, Selesnya Sanctuary.
Right.
Now, what on earth is he doing with all these lands that come into play tapped and bounce your other lands? Take a look at the next slide, we'll figure it out. Now, oh, well, this wasn't the slide that I was intending to get to, but please tell me about what on earth is going on with these cards right here.
All right, so there's two things that the lands can do. The first thing, and this is kind of where people call it Amulet combo, is Amulet of Vigor. You have it as a 4-up over here.
Walk us through exactly how on earth that interaction works.
So Amulet of Vigor is whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped and under your control, untap it. You could just say land. That's what we're doing with it. But what it does mean is with all the bounce lands, all the Karus, they come into play tapped, and actually before you have to return a land, you get to untap a land. They will untap. So you have a moment there where you can make 2 mana. Sometimes you'll bounce something else. Sometimes you'll actually have them bounce themselves. But the basic idea is like your land drop for this turn is making 2 mana, not 1. Lands really aren't designed to make 2 mana, so that's going to lead to some pretty broken things that we can do. I think the first one is, and this is by far like the best card in the deck, is Summer Bloom.
Really?
Summer Bloom is, it's better than Amulet. It is what the deck runs off of. So Summer Bloom, sometimes what it can do with Amulet is it'll let you take that bounce. You can play 3 more lands. So you can take that bounce land, you can play it, untap it, make 2, and you can do it 2 more times and work all the way up to 6 mana. Even if you don't have Amulet, the bounce lands are actually 2 mana sources. So say I had 2 regular lands, cast a turn 2 Summer Bloom, I can just be like 3rd land, bounce land, 4th land, and I actually ramped 3 times on turn 2. So
really powerful. And you're not, a lot of the time with Summer Bloom, you know, one of the reasons a lot of other decks don't just play it is that they don't have 3 more lands in their hand.
Right, you only need 2 or maybe even 1 with these you just need like 2 bounce lands.
Yeah, right.
So you actually still have more cards left in your hand when you're done. You'll see the last card here is Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Summer Bloom's effect's pretty unique, so she's bad Summer Bloom. Basically is how it works. Summer Bloom is so good that you wish you could play more than 4. As you'll see, like the deck takes up enough slots that you can't just like find your Summer Blooms. We actually have very little deck manipulation because you have to play 28 lands in the deck.
Yeah, exactly. That, again, Summer Bloom wouldn't work if you didn't have a handful of lands when you cast it.
Right.
Okay, so you've got Summer Bloom, you've got bad Summer Bloom. Poor Azusa, she has her feelings hurt, but you know.
She's lost, but she's seeking.
She's lost, trying to seek out how to become a Summer Bloom. So you might be asking what on earth you do with all of this mana. This is what you do with it. You've got 4 Primeval Titan, you've got Serum Visions, presumably to find all this stuff, and Summoner's Pact, which chiefly, I think, gets you more Primeval Titans. Is that right?
It's basically more Primeval Titans. So when you're playing the deck, what you're doing is you're counting to 6. You're using all these broken lands to get up to 6 mana as fast as you can. You said Serum Visions. Like I said, you can't have much deck manipulation. We found room for this one. That's it. You don't get anything else. So the card is very unique. It actually lets you set up your draws. But you're right. What we want to do is we have 8 Primeval Titans right here. Sometimes Summoner's Pact will find you something else, but for the most part, we can just say it's another Titan. And as you see later, it's actually going to come into play in helping us get more Titans. And
yeah, explain to us, and we'll go through the cards in general, but we can clearly see that this is a deck about getting Primeval Titan into play. We're going to look at some of the other things you can do besides Primeval Titan in a little bit, but what actually do you do with Primeval Titan?
Okay, so I'm going to set up a whole combo line for you, because this is there's a few different things that Primeval Titan can do.
Give me the dream scenario.
So the combo scenario is that Primeval Titan goes and gets 2 bounce Boros Garrison, which is the red-white bounce land, and Slayers Stronghold. Boros Garrison is your only non-green bounce land, and the only reason we even want to play a non-green one is so that we can do this cool thing we're about to do.
Okay.
So we untap both those immediately before we have to bounce anything. Slayers Stronghold is for Maps and Restored. It gives a creature +2/+0, haste, and vigilance. and it costs red-white, which conveniently is Boros Garrison. So tap all those lands, give Primeval Titan +2/+0 in haste.
All right, gotcha.
Then he's going to, so he'll have haste. He's going to get to swing for 8 this turn. He's going to get 2 more lands.
Seems pretty good.
Okay, if you really want to be ambitious and just kill them, you can go get our second utility land, which is Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, which is 4 mana on tap. You need red-white again, so it's another Boros land. It gives them double strike.
Gotcha.
There are situations with 2 amulets where you can do all of this in one turn. You can double activate Slayers Stronghold, and you can actually 20 them.
Oh, okay.
But actually, what you do more often with the deck, and this is kind of where the deck is powerful, is you actually get a bounce land and Tolaria West.
Gotcha.
And that's the linchpin of the deck, because you get them both into play, and you actually use the bounce land to pick up the Tolaria West. And now we can transmute that into a Summoner's Pact, which is another Titan. So
right, so you can just chain Titans over and over again until your opponent can't answer all.
Right, so there's some decks out there which are, blooming just into Titan, and you say, well, how do I beat Path to Exile? Well, the question is, like, every time I Titan, if I'm worried about you pathing it, I'll just get a setup for another Titan.
Right.
There were some utility things, I think, that we can transmute for. That would be like, we have a Pact of Negation, we have a Slaughter Pact. You can actually get Cavern of Souls. There's some tricky lands you can get. So there's a lot of different other things you can do with it. Out of the board, you can get Bojuka Bogs, Chalice of the Voids, certain things, but still the main thing is just always that Tolaria West engine is what you're setting up with Primeval Titan. Okay, and I want to look at some of the other things that you do with the Tolaria West engine on the next slide. Now, you've got Pact of Negation, 2 copies. Right.
Slaughter Pact, 1 copy. And now we see something that is totally different than anything else. Hive Mind. What on earth is going on?
Okay, well, I told you before, the kind of the deck's about getting to 6 mana, right? Okay, well, and I just told you about that cool engine with Tolaria West. Well, I'm playing 7 packs, and I have a deck that gets to 6 mana really easily.
Okay.
And I guess I sometimes want something that can win right away, or maybe I don't have enough Titans, so we threw in a couple Hive Minds, because it's not uncommon for you to just be able to make Hive Mind and cast a green pact.
Yeah, and explain that really quick, because this deck has a lot of combos in it. I can't even tell you what Hive Mind does when I'm sitting here reading it. What is the combo element
so
of
Hive Mind's pretty unfair. When everybody plays this, and anyone plays an instant or sorcery, everybody plays that sorcery.
Okay.
Now these packs, they have this downside that I don't actually, you pay for them later, and if you don't, you lose the game.
Right.
So I decide that everybody should just go willy-nilly and cast lots of packs that they can't even pay for, and then it's your turn, and now you have to pay for all the packs you just cast.
And because your opponent loses, or
sometimes play green, and they cast a green pact.
Right. The Summoner's Pact, poor them, they can't even go get a green creature.
Right.
Hits their upkeep, they can't pay it, and they lose the game. That makes sense. Now, finally, Simian Spirit Guide, not a card you see in a lot of the other versions of this deck.
Right.
How did you decide to play this card?
This is what I actually think makes the deck a little bit better than some of the versions you've been seeing on Magic Online. A lot of times you'll see Sakura Tribe Scout or Ancient Strings in this spot. One thing is, while play testing, we found that Sakura Tribe Scout rarely tapped more than once. That's a card that taps to put a land into play. Right. Kind of like another bad Summer Bloom. But we actually realized, well, it's all about counting to 6, and if you're never making more than 1 land, how about I just get the mana right now? So we started playing more Simian Spirit Guides, and it actually gives you access to even like turn 1 kills. You can Spirit Guide out an Amulet and start playing bounce lands at the beginning of the game. Totally.
Okay, so that takes us through most of the spells. We can look at the next slide. There's some of these lands that we're getting. Now, I see Gemstone Mine, City of Brass, Tendo Ice Bridge. Do you need 5 color lands? Just why do you need 5 colors?
Well, the mana's not particularly good.
Okay.
We have to cast the turn, there's a lot of utility lands that you need, so you have a lot of colorless lands. You also have a lot of bounce lands, which don't really make your colors on time.
Yeah.
So there's about, there's 10 bounce lands, there's about, I think, 7 utility lands, so that's 17. The remaining lands have to make the colors you need them to make, because everything else isn't working toward the cause. So they're working overtime. They just make everything. Gemstone Mine is the best one. City of Brass hurts yourself, but we figured Brass is better than Tendo Ice Bridge, but if you get 2 of them, it's pretty painful.
It can be a lot of damage against the decks like Zoo, so on and so forth. Okay, let's look at some of those other lands very quickly now. We see some of the utility lands you were talking about. You walked us through Slayers Stronghold, Sunhome, Tolaria West, absolute linchpin of the deck.
Right.
Glimmerpost, good against what? Aggressive decks?
So sometimes when you're playing against Zoo, you'll make a Titan, and you're worried that they're going to alpha you and kill you the next turn. So what you can do is you can Titan for 2 Glimmerposts, or if you have a Glimmerpost in play, you can Titan for Vesuva Glimmerpost. You could gain 4 or 6. That's probably enough to get you to next turn, and the second swing of the Titan is almost always the lethal swing.
That makes sense. Okay, let's get through the rest of these lands. We've talked about the Karus already. See, Vesuva, which you just explained, Cavern of Souls seems really good when you're casting Titan after Titan after Titan, like you were talking about earlier.
This one's good. You actually transmute for it most of the time.
Okay.
So, against a control deck, I don't need a fast kill. They'd probably just, spell snared or mana leak it anyway. So I'll just slowly build up lands and I'll transmute for Cavern of Souls and I'll just start making turn 6 Titans. And Modern's really ill-equipped to deal with that.
Okay.
Their way to deal with it normally is to tectonic edge you.
Right.
But because you're picking up your own lands, you never actually have 4 lands in play.
Because
so
the Karus count as
they're just one land.
land.
So I can get all the way to 6 mana on just 3 lands until on that last turn I'm like, 6th mana is Cavern, Titan you.
And there it is. Okay, and then 1 for us to get with Path and so on and so forth.
Sometimes they path you.
Sure. Yeah. So we need to look at the sideboard. Let's get through these really quick. Now, this is 10 whole cards. Seal of Primordium. 10 seconds. Why do we care about this card?
People play Blood Moon against you. It's good against Affinity. It's good against Splinter Twin.
Awesome. Firespout. What does Firespout do?
Sometimes creature decks can race you. If you Firespout them, they won't race you.
And Leyline of Sanctity. All right, kind of totally different.
Our combo deck, basically the main deck is great. So there's very few things you can board in. Leyline stops Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is atrocious for this deck. The reason we can play this is that no one's thought seizing right now.
Okay, and finally we see Ghost Quarter Bojuka Bog. Bojuka Bog makes sense against graveyard decks.
Right.
What exactly is Ghost Quarter doing? What do you want it against?
Well, it's got a lot of utility against a Scape Shift. At the same time, you can get it with Primeval Titan, so it's this tutorable effect. Also, if you're worried about maybe dying to an Inkmoth Nexus next turn, you can Ghost Quarter their Nexus. So there's just a lot of some corners you can do.
All right, and finally we've got a Slaughter Pact that you can tutor for, a Chalice of the Void here too. What do you bring that in against?
Great against Living End. In the control matchups, you want to put it on 1 so that they don't path your Titans. Slaughter Pact is great against Twin. You want 2 of them, so you can Tolaria West for the second one. Thragtusk is something you can Green Sun for if you need to gain 5 life this time.
All right, well there you have it. One of the most innovative decks I have ever seen. Matthias Hunt, it is paying off, undefeated today here at Pro Tour Born of the Gods. Let's take it back to Rich and Marshall at the desk.